We have one of the world's most successful businessmen with us here today. David Siegel will be back at another time to teach us about business principles and foundational things that will really help us as we walk out of Liberty University and walk into the business world. But today, we've asked him to come and to really speak from his heart about something that is vitally important. We believe that what he has to share with you this morning can change your life, and if not your life, can through you change the life of someone else. David, about 15 weeks ago, went through something that has changed the very trajectory of his life. And since then, he's been on a bit of a crusade, and he's asked us to partner with him. This is something that we're passionate about as well. And so we wanted to make sure that you knew about this. After Mr. Siegel is finished telling you about what's happened to him and what God has just been teaching him recently, we want to come back and invite you to the very rally, and I'll give you some instructions on how you can be a part of that very thing next Sunday in D.C. And so can we just put our hands together for David Siegel? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. America's under attack. It's not ISIS. It's not Iran. It's not North Korea. It's not China. It's drug addiction. And every one of us in this room have been affected by the drug addiction, whether it be in your family, whether it be your friends, your neighbors, someone you know. It's all affected by drug addiction. I've been affected by drug addiction. 15 weeks ago, my beautiful daughter, Victoria, died of a drug overdose. I didn't even know she was using drugs. That's how naive I was. But before I buried her, I made a vow that for the rest of my life, I would do something about this horrendous epidemic. It's not even an epidemic, it's a pandemic. 25 million people in this country are using drugs other than for illnesses. 25 million. Every 4 minutes, somebody in this country is dying of a drug overdose. 350 a day. Now, those just sound like numbers to you, but if a jumbo jetliner with 350 passengers crashed at the airport here, it would be world headlines. And yet, you don't hear a word. 100,000 people every year are dying of drug overdoses. You don't hear a word. There's a stigma to drug use. It's swept under the carpet. No one talks about it. It affects every life. I always thought that people use drugs were sleeping on park benches, were sleeping underneath the expressways. It's every walk of life. In fact, the more money you have, the easier it is for your children to get a hold of drugs. 70% of the drugs come right out of the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. This epidemic is killing our future youth. It's killing our future Bill Gates, our future Steve Jobs. You're being robbed of books you'll never read. You're being robbed of movies you'll never see, of music you'll never hear. It's horrible, and we have to put an end to it, and yet it's growing by leaps and bounds. Heroin use is up 400%. Cocaine use is up 200%. So when I made up my mind that I was going to do something about it, I wondered, what could I possibly do that isn't already being done? Because drugs have been around forever. And guess what? I found out nothing's being done. When I say nothing, I mean nothing. A lot of lip service, a lot of statistics, but nothing is being done. Currently, 25 million people are doing drugs. There's another 25 million in this country that are in recovery. These are former addicts that got off of drugs and are now leading a useful life. That's 50 million people. And when you take their families, That's another 50 million. There's 100 million people out of a population a little over 300 million. 1/3 of our population is involved in drugs, and nothing is being done about it. I met with the Surgeon General of the United States. I met with the head of DEA in Washington. I've visited Betty Ford rehabs. I've talked to experts in the field. I've talked to people that run methadone clinics. I've talked to everybody I could talk to that had any knowledge. And in 15 weeks, I got a doctorate in drug education in 15 weeks. And I'm doing this 100% of my time. I have a great company. We're the #1 in our industry. I turned it over to my executives, and now all I do is work on this problem. On my desk every day, there's a whole pile of work-related papers on the left, drug-related papers on the right, and I look at the work-related and I say money. I look at the drug-related and I say lives. And my whole purpose the rest of my life is to save lives. And if I can save one life here, it's been well worth the journey. So the first thing, thank you. You know, this Columbia University says that 25% of college students are using drugs without an illness. Now, this is Liberty University. That number is definitely not 25% here. But whatever the percent, maybe 1%, maybe 2%, I'm sure in this whole audience, you know who you are. I don't have to point you out. I couldn't point you out. Everyone looks alike to me. But I will tell you that if you are thinking about trying drugs, don't. It's got a hook that you can't get rid of. Marijuana, everyone says, oh, marijuana is safe. Let me tell you something. Marijuana is a gateway drug. People start on marijuana at 14, 15 years old, and then it definitely leads to cocaine, heroin, everything else. The pill mills around the states have been cracking down on them, so now people are going to heroin. You have a horrible heroin epidemic in the Northeast. You all can read about these statistics. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but there is so my first goal, and I've been visiting universities, is to get a random drug testing program in universities. Not only it's not a punitive thing, but it's to find out who is using drugs so we can help them, so we can counsel them. And if somebody is severely hooked on drugs, so we can rehab them, but not to kick them out of school, not to ruin their lives, but to help them lead a productive life. So that my first goal is trying to get drug testing in middle schools, high schools, and in universities. And I've traveled around the country and I've talked to a lot of universities, and a lot of them are receptive, some are not. But the middle school and high schools are definitely receptive because that's where it's all beginning. At 14, 15 years old, when the frontal cortex of the brain is not fully developed, and when people start taking marijuana, whatever common sense they had is wiped clean, and that's why they go to harder drugs. But the second goal that I have is just as important, maybe more important. How many of you in this audience have heard the word naloxone? Let me see some hands. Anybody know naloxone? I don't know. I don't see any hands. Maybe there's a few. Naloxone is probably the greatest miracle drug of all time. If somebody was laying on the floor, one breath on overdosing on drugs, one breath away from death, a shot of naloxone, it also comes in a nasal spray, within 2 to 5 minutes, they'll be standing up telling you what they took. It is like anti-venom for a snake bite. It is like somebody carrying nitroglycerin for a heart attack or an inhaler for asthma. Naloxone has been out since 1971, 45 years. It's approved by the FDA. It's completely harmless. I could take some right now. It'd be like taking a glass of water. And yet, It could save millions of lives, and yet no one heard of it. People that have children who have a drug addiction don't know about it. Every drugstore sells it by prescription. The reason it's not over the counter is because the drug companies are smart. They figure a prescription, they get a lot more money. They get anywhere from $40 to $100 for it, where it costs $3 to make. And so they haven't made an application to put it over the counter. But naloxone, now that you're aware of it, if you know anyone that is using drugs, make sure that they have it. It's also called Narcan. That's kind of like a trademark, Narcan and naloxone. Make sure they have it, because this could save their life. When the first responders came to my house, when my daughter had overdosed, I don't even know if they carried it. A lot of first responders don't. But since New York City has got a huge heroin epidemic, now 20,000 police officers are carrying naloxone. So it's becoming more well known, and now there's 15,000 more people that know about naloxone. Naloxone, remember that name because it can save somebody's life. You all heard about anti-venom for a snake bite. Naloxone is for an overdose, and it's easy to use. You stab them in the, well, I shouldn't say stab. You give them a shot in the thigh muscle, or you spray it in their nose. Every addict should have it in their pocket. It can come in a small container that if they overdose, somebody reach in their pocket, pull it out. It could be attached to their keychain. It is the most important thing that we have to save lives. So naloxone, school testing, and I hope that my message is getting across to you, because, you know, there's so many, you know, the cure for cancer could be dying today. Can you imagine that? The things that we're losing, it's unreal. But let me just finish by saying one thing. I heard a story, and a lot of you probably heard it too, years ago. A storm blew millions of seahorses onto the beach. And a little boy was down there picking them up and throwing them back in the ocean. And an old man walked up to the boy and he said, "Little boy, you can't possibly make a difference." And the little boy picked up a seahorse and he threw it back. He said, "I made a difference to that one, didn't I?" And although I can't make maybe a difference to all of you, if I save one life today, it was well worth my trip here. Thank you. Thank you. On Sunday, we're finally going to take the lid off of the horrible epidemic called drug addiction. And we want you all to come to Washington. There's going to be anywhere from 100,000 to 1 million people on the mall. We're going to lift that veil off of this horrible epidemic, and we're going to tell people about it, and hopefully we'll get lots of news coverage, and people will be aware of what's going on out there around them, and prevent people like my daughter from dying. And we want you there. The school said that they will arrange any of you that want to come, but it's not just going to be speeches. We're going to have Steven Tyler, Sheryl Crow, The Fray, Joe Walsh, and a dozen other people that my generation doesn't even know about. But you know about them. And it's going to start on the mall at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but there's going to be all types of tents and literature and mingling starting around noontime on Sunday. So all of you are invited. I'd love to have a big turnout from Liberty University. It's been an honor to be here. I was a very close friend of Dr. Jerry Falwell Sr. We consider ourselves close friends. We talked often. I was out here. He invited me here when this school was a small part of what it is today. He would have been so proud of what it is now. He would have been so proud of you, so proud of the thousands of students, and the ones that I met are just fantastic people. I wish every one of those people I met since I've been here were my children. But anyway, I want to protect you. I want you to have a long, drug-free life, and God bless all of you.